Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of Uncomfortable Conversations, part of the Marketing Human series. I'm Louise and I'm here today with Chelsea, an incredible HR leader and someone who really gets what it means to show up as your full, authentic self at work. This series is all about getting real, talking about the things we all think about but rarely say out loud. And today we're starting with one of the most personal and powerful topics, and something that is really, really close to my heart, particularly being your own authentic self. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for being part of this journey with me. I'm a massive fan of yours. I love all your content. You're so honest, your style is authentic, and you just come as you are. And I think that is just so brilliant. Before we get into today's episode, we're going to talk about, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your career journey, what sort of got you here today?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that introduction, Louise. So, what led me into HR was I kind of fell into it. I think most people in their career fall into something, and I absolutely loved the pace, the problem solving. I started off my career in construction as an admin, dealing with HR, looking at the rights, thinking about, what do I actually want to do? What do I want to contribute? And it was just really empowering to be somewhere I can be like, right, this is where my niche is. This is what I love. I love people to an extent. I like being, going back and being a bit of an introvert, draw energy on others and myself. So my career started off in construction. I've moved around in a few different industries. So I've gone from local government, I've worked in education, moved to tech within the EV industry, and now I'm back in tech. A very short stint in Ted Baker. Great experience.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing experience, completely different to what I'd ever been in, and particularly from a retail industry. And then moving back into tech, where I think it is, I like that product mindset and how you adapt that and bring that from a people perspective. So I find that really interesting. And then, yeah, like authenticity, like that is completely like a hot topic right now, and it really resonates with me. So I'm really excited to jump into this conversation and definitely get into it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Really interesting to hear. And I think as well, so many people that I talk to, just when I'm sort of out and about and in different like networking groups and sort of channel groups, people move around. They kind of get to a profession. You've got to HR as a profession. I've got to marketing as a profession. Don't know how. No one wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be a B2B marketer. Who does that? You just kind of fall into it with marketing. But we sort of get into this I can carve out something here. I'm passionate about it. I enjoy it. But they move around so many different industries, and I've done that sort of unconventional squiggly career route of trying to find where you fit, trying to find your passion and the place where you really feel like I can show up and I can be myself and I can actually make an impact. I can do something that's actually going to be tangible and is going to drive some real value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really good to get exposure of different industries.
Mm.
And I think if you find yourself in just one field, you won't see that exposure, the difference of scenarios, different ways of working, and really being able to find your niche. And I think luckily for both of us, we love a startup environment. I think what I know about you is that you love solving problems. And I think that resonates with me as well. Being in a startup environment, you know, it's completely different to a large organization and the way they operate, the way they work. When you're in a startup environment, the autonomy, the freedom, the collaboration, the connection, and without moving around and finding those different environments, it's quite hard to find you and what really drives you and who you are as a person, and what brings you to life. So I think it's great that we've both had that exposure to see the different nuances in different workplaces and actually how that creates you as a whole. I think it's really empowering and quite a great story.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's in a way, it's almost sort of missing from particularly the next generation I'm finding coming through. And maybe it's a side effect almost of that kind of COVID generation where they were having to do exams online, they were starting jobs online. They've maybe gone from being in education straight into being onboarded completely remotely, and a lot of businesses don't have offices anymore. And it's almost people kind of develop this persona. They seem to develop this corporate image of themselves, which is, I have to present a certain way and I have to speak a certain way, and I'm going to almost, we feel like we have to wear a mask. And I don't think it's just women. I think it's worse for women. I think we probably feel it more so than men. And I know from talking to male colleagues and even, senior leaders, women versus men, and that whole piece around almost imposter syndrome, but almost this, can I really be myself? Can I actually show vulnerability? Can I authentically sit, and maybe I don't talk as polished as some other people do? And I hear this a lot, particularly when I talk around be your own authentic self. Just be you. Just come as you are. You don't need to pretend. You don't need to, act a certain way. And that one of the key things people always say to me is, but I don't sound as polished, Louise. I grew up, wherever that. I mean, I grew up in Australia and then I moved to Luton, and then sort of moved around from there. My accent goes all over the place. People say to me half the time, "Are you from the Midlands?" Which I've never been, but I have picked, like, it's a genuine concern that some people have of, I don't sound like I've gone to Oxford, or I don't sound like I've, gone to university. I kind of came through school. And I think in a way it's sad that I think society and business particularly puts that sort of pressure on people. It almost sets you up into an environment of, you have to conform. You have to almost wear a mask, wear a hat, pretend to be somebody else. But then if you go out into a networking environment or somebody meets you, that's going to drop. You can't do that all the time. It's exhausting. You're going to get to the point where you're going to burn out. You're probably going to wake up one day and think, who on earth am I? Who am I trying to be? I just want to be me. I remember starting out early in my career. I mean, I didn't go to university. It wasn't an option for me at all. I went straight from high school, did a little small stint at college, and then had to go into work. I didn't have a choice. I needed to pay I needed to pay rent. When I started literally at the bottom and worked my way up nearly 30 years ago, you go back in time where there was no flexible working. There was no such thing. There was no such thing as working from home. There was no such thing as, can I start early? Can I finish early? I need to, if I've got to leave for a doctor's or whatever it was. That was unheard of. You didn't do that. And particularly as a woman going into marketing at that time was a very male-dominated industry, hugely male-dominated, and particularly in technology. It still is, sadly. It's getting better. But it absolutely just baffling, the sort of things that people sort of put this pressure on themselves, but it's almost been driven by and dictated by those sort of views of well, you have to have had an education at this establishment, or you only went to that university. Well, I mean, that doesn't really count. Versus, well, actually, no, I didn't at all, but this is me and this is who I am and this is my life skills. So if that's good enough for you, then hey, great, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, that's really brave, because I think a lot of people would really struggle with doing that in an interview. You almost have that feeling of, like, I want to be liked. It's that people pleasing element coming out. And in that split moment, you could be toying with, do I say what I think they want me to say, or do I say what, I should really be saying, which is the truth and which is me?
Interestingly, the culture within that company, which I took the job, which I then found out. So within that job, I had a manager in that role who used to tell me not to be myself. He used to prerequisite going into into customer meetings, or any kind of a meeting where I had to talk about any marketing campaign or give an event summary or an update of. You just need to tone it down, Louise. Just don't, you get really excited when you talk. I was like, well, yeah, because I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And I'd stand up to talk and he would stop me and say, shall I just take over because, you know, you're going really red and it's obviously really uncomfortable for you. And I would sit there and be like, well, no. I mean, yes, I go red when I talk. I can't help it. It's me. It's something that I do. I talk fast. I'm passionate about what I talk about, and I do have that sort of moment, that uncomfortable moment, whenever I have to stand up and present. But that's me. That's who I am. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. It makes other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if somebody points it out to you, it's almost like someone's then putting a big arrow over your head with a big neon sign flashing at you, saying, "Hey, look at this person. Look how she, you know, look how red her face has gone." Rather than just, and on the flip side of that, I left that company and went to a different one. And I kind of almost had this sort of ingrained fear of, I can't ever speak. I was like a rabbit in the headlights, because I was like, God, everyone's going to point it out and everyone's going to say, well, what the hell is she talking about? And because this guy had said, nobody will ever take you seriously because you go red when you talk. Literally his words. He was a manager. No one will ever take you seriously. He used to, awful, absolutely awful. So I was almost of this, well, I can't ever be myself. I can't be who I am because everyone's telling me not to do that. And I'd moved on to a different company, and I remember I'd had to present once into the whole sales and marketing team. I'd had to take them through a pretty complex campaign. It was a new product launch, and there was a lot going on in it. And I did it, and I delivered it, and I could feel myself. You kind of feel it coming up from your neck. But I was like, no, I'm just going to carry on. I'm just going to carry on because I really want to do this. And afterwards, I remember talking to a couple of people. Within my team and within the sales team, saying, oh God, that was horrendous. I hated that. I don't think I delivered that well at all. And they were saying, Louise, you were absolutely fine. You talk, and one of them actually said, you're just authentic, you're just yourself. You just explained it. And I went, yeah, but we're really well. And they went, yeah, but that's you. We know that. That's what you do. And he just said, but you always do that. You do that when we talk to you in general anyway, so no one really cares. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, what a different approach, right? You know, going from early in your career having somebody basically beat you down and say that's not good enough and make you feel so uncomfortable with who you are, to people actually getting to know you as a person, being like, that's authentic, that's you, and really relating to that. How did you turn, you know, I really hate public speaking as well. I find it the most uncomfortable thing ever. Like as a child, I would hide at my own birthday parties because I just hated attention of myself. And it's a real journey I'm still going on. How did you turn that into a strength? And like, you know, what steps did you do to just, you know, make it a bit more of like your superpower and like get over those hurdles?
It's a really interesting one. So I was invited once to go to a senior leaders, and again, like about 15 years ago. So I was an early career marketing manager, and I'd been invited to be a guest it was a CEO event. So everyone in the room was CEOs. Everyone in the room was a man. And then I rock up and I'm a marketer and I'm a manager and I'm not a CEO and I'm a woman. My little stiletto heels, because that's what I wore in those days. Totters into the room, sits down on all these tables. And I just remember I kind of sat and I looked around at all these people and I was like, oh my God, why am I here? Why am I in this room? And I was like visibly cringing down in my chair thinking, please don't ask me a question. And I kind of at that point, you know, you've got to go around tables and you've got to introduce yourself. And I was like, oh God, this is my worst nightmare. I just want the floor to swallow me. I was like, I hate this. And one of the guest speakers was a woman. And she got up on stage. She was, I don't know, she was probably the age that I am now. She's probably mid-40s. Woman, stood up there, blonde, fair-skinned. And the first thing she said was, I know I'm going to go really red. I know I'm going to talk really fast. I'm really passionate about what I've got to say to you today. I get really excited when I talk about this subject because I really believe in it. So it's not going to bother me. Hopefully it doesn't bother you. I'm just going to crack on and I'm going to talk. If I talk too fast, put your hand up, tell me to slow down. That's fine. And I was like, wow, that you just stood up. And because she knew what that was, and she'd accepted who she was, and she'd accepted this is me and I can't change it. She saw off any negative comment that anybody could have made, or any little sniggering remark that anyone would have made, or whispering in the back of the room. She immediately headed that off by saying, I don't care. I know. I know what's happening. I know what I'm doing. If it's bothering you, then that's your issue, not mine, but I'm going to carry on talking. And it was just this light bulb moment for me of, she's literally she was like a business owner. She was, I can't remember where she was from now, but she was a really, really senior. She was talking about competitive advantage and crafting your competitive advantage and USP. She was like talking about really, really big, chunky topics, but she prefaced it with, this is who I am, deal with it. And that moment was a real wake up moment for me of, okay, well, it's who I am. It's just who I am. I've just got to own it. I can either let it hold me back for the rest of my life and never stand up and present or do anything, or I can actually just lean into this and embrace it and actually just sort of practice and work on some little tricks and, sort of the I'd started my early career in media and PR, and they teach you in media training how to breathe, how to, compose yourself before you're going to go and give a media statement or anything. So I'd done quite a lot on like crisis comms training, because I worked for an airline, so you kind of have to. But I kind of went back to all of the breathing exercises that they're taught you. They teach you specific things to moderate your tone. So before you're going to go to talk, you're supposed to like do ho, ho, ho. You've got to like really breathe in, breathe out, and really elongate ho, 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 and, modulate your tone. Because the worst thing apparently, and people do this, you don't speak. You're so nervous, you don't speak at all until 5 minutes before you're about to go up on stage, and then you go to speak and your voice comes out croaky and you've got dry throat and everything else. So they literally said in the training, take yourself into the toilets, into the bathroom, wherever you need to go, and do this for 5 minutes. Do this breathing exercise, do this ho, 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 elongate your vowels, your sounds, get your vocal cords warmed up. And it actually works.
Really?
And I genuinely do it. I do it now. Before I have to go to present and speak, I actually do it. I still do to this day, 20 odd years later.
The Superman like pose, when you like put your hands on your hips and you stand up and you like build that confidence. I've tried that, but I might need to try the ho 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 and like get moving. Because
really breathe out when you do it. But I found, and as well, I've sort of gained in confidence as I've got older and I've progressed in my career when I have to stand up to present. But I always start with, I have to anchor myself. So I have to physically have my hand on something. And if there's nothing for me to have my hand on, I have to hold something, because I never know what to do with my hands. And again, it's because me being authentic, I move my hands. I'm very visual when I talk and I explain things, and I don't like to do that when I stand up to present. So I have to physically anchor myself. I either need to have my hand on something, or I need to physically hold something. And I've now, and again, it comes with age and experience, and when you sort of embrace authenticity and you embrace being who you are, and I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm just gonna break the mold and be myself. It's kind of done me all right so far. I almost now, I had a scenario, I had to stand up and present to the entire sales team, and it was the most ridiculous room ever to present in. There was nothing to hold on to. There was like a kind of stage with some steps behind it. So I was like, I'm going to fall down. If I move around, I'm literally just going to fall backwards into this big dip thing. And they gave me a microphone and a clicker, and I was like, for God's sake. So I started my piece with, I've got a microphone and a clicker. I said, well, this is great, isn't it? I said, I'm going to talk into the clicker and I'm going to click with the microphone. I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with these. And it just lightened the mood, and everyone just laughed. And I thought, do you know what? This is who I am. That's the sort of thing that I would do. I would say, I'm not funny. I'm generally not funny. I don't do jokes. I never get them right, but I'm quite pithy, quite from a Yorkshire background, so I'm a bit of a pithy, little bit sarcastic sometimes. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to lean into this side of me, and I'm just going to embrace it, and I'm just going to start being who I am, and I'm just going to start showing, well, this is the real me. I'm unfiltered. I
Yeah.
can. There's a time and a place, right? Where
Yeah.
you have to, and again, I think it comes with experience. It comes with being in a working environment. You've got to learn to adapt your style without compromising your principles and your values.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's all about connection. Like that's something I really try to focus on rather than professionalism. I think starting off early in my career, particularly in HR, there's such a stereotype of how HR people must behave and must be. And there's a lot of fear that comes with, when I join a new company, the whole, oh no, HR's coming. I know a lot of HR professionals will really understand where I'm coming from. And a lot of people might be rolling their eyes hearing that, oh yeah, well, HR people say that. But when I transitioned from local government, which was very heavily like policy driven, process, it was very different style of HR to when I went into like an EV industry and tech in a startup environment. And I remember when I first joined this company and I came in really professional. I was sort of like the first HR person. It did not work. It absolutely did not work. And this was the company that introduced me to feedback and this whole new world of what professionalism could look like, which really pivoted, my career in HR and who I wanted to be. And I would always give credit to that company for that. They really helped me own who I am. And I had feedback from somebody that first week saying, you come across really cold. And that was a real shock to me because I'm naturally very bubbly. I love talking to people. And then I realized it was because I was putting on this professional stance. Like I was being a person who I was trained to be fine. I was, following behaviors that, senior members of staff in HR was demonstrating to me, and I thought that was normal. And then I realized that style didn't work. So then I started approaching people in a completely different style. And it did take me, I would say, about 3 months to really pivot my way of thinking. And I started, sharing, not me as a professional. I was showing me as a person. I was really getting to know people. I was connecting with them. And I was trying to find the balance. Like you said, it's really hard to like come in and just, be completely professional or completely yourself. You have to find the in between. And I started business partnering and I was really enjoying working with senior leaders in the business. But then I realized they wasn't ever being honest with me. And what I mean by that is they was watching what words they would use, what phrases they would say, how they would explain a situation. And I couldn't understand what they were saying. And in the moment I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I really do not understand what you're trying to tell me. You've used so much jargon because you're scared of how I'm going to react. So I was like, let's start afresh. I'll be honest, you can be honest, and let's just go from there. I said, if you approach me clearly of what's happening, honestly what's happening, even if you've made a mistake as, a team leader in the business, just tell me what's happened. I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to help you. And started building up that connection with people. And in turn, that was demonstrating, my professionalism in the workplace because I could actually help solve problems and I was helping solve things within the business versus not really knowing what's going on, being on the back foot all the time and having to respond reactively to it. And that shift in mindset, that shift of approach, I stopped really worrying about what people thought about me. There's some days I'm a bit like, oh, do they like me? Because, you're new and you naturally want that. But I stopped covering up parts that were important to me, started covering up, I started using so many words I never understood, really. Like when we use engagement, I just said it because I thought I had to say it. And now when people say words, I'm like, yeah, but what does that mean? What do you mean? When you say that, because engagement to me, actually engaging me in the workplace to give me autonomy. Engaging somebody else in the workplace means a great salary. What do you mean? Let's use simple words and language to really understand things now. And I think that comes from like different diverse backgrounds as well, like different life experiences. If you're using a set tone of how you think you should speak within the business or how people believe you should be spoken to, the amount of miscommunication and confusion that happens, it just slows everything down. And I know
Yeah.
you had a similar situation to that, like in the workplace, understand different like words, jargons, how to approach. It is a really difficult thing to navigate. And I suppose for the younger generation coming in, I would say it's really hard. I would say watch the people around you, listen to the situations that they're dealing with, build up that commercial acumen, like understand what different roles really mean, and just be a sponge of knowledge. I think that's the missing part. I'm only about 10 years into my career, but I came in as a sponge, and I think I've seen different generations come in now with a little bit more enticement of like, I expect that, to your point of like, they should expect to be able to speak to the CEO, but be a sponge and learn how to be authentic whilst being professional and find your own flavor in it. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. What about you? What do you think is, a great tip to give to the younger generation coming into the workplace and finding that balance?
I started pushing back on this pretty sort of halfway through my career, just as I was coming out of manager into a head of role. People keep saying to me, leaders and mentors and business people kept saying to me, you need to be more strategic, Louise. You need to be more strategic.
Oh my
I was like,
God.
God, I need to be strategic. Okay. And I was like, how do I need to be? What? And they wouldn't explain it. That you need to be more strategic. And then I started questioning it and pushing back. And I said, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
How do you measure being strategic? What is the outcome of that? What do you want me to do? What do I need to demonstrate in order to show you I'm being strategic? People sort of, I feel like sometimes managers and leaders can hide behind words. They can hide behind terms when they maybe don't understand it very well themselves, or maybe they feel threatened by the person sat in front of them. They'll tend to throw out quite a lot of words. You need to be more strategic. So one thing that I always say within my teams is, I don't have all the answers. I'm not the expert. I'm not the expert. No, that's why I hire you. That's why I hired a team. That's why we have people around us. I don't need to know everything. I'm not a technical expert by any means at all. And I will be the person that will get all of the techies together within a room with a whiteboard, and I will say, I don't understand a single word you've just said. Draw it. Illustrate it for me. Explain that in a diagram. How does that work? And particularly in marketing. And I think one of the things that marketers coming in need to get more comfortable with, if you don't understand it, you can't market it. So ask the questions. 9 times out of 10, technical people will explain it to you, and they will keep explaining it to you. They keep explaining it to me because I keep saying, just don't get it, don't understand. 1 in 10 times, I've pushed back so hard and so much that the technical team have actually said, we're not ready. We can't articulate this. I can't answer your questions, Louise. We're not ready to market this. Okay, great. Let's go back to the drawing board. But, better to do that, better to learn early, fail fast, learn as you're going, adapt as you're going, rather than get halfway down to the point of, you may be at the deadline and you haven't actually understood the assignment or the brief and you've gone off on a different tangent because you didn't want to ask a question. And then you don't deliver something, or you deliver something completely wrong, and then the deadline's been missed and everything else. So I'll always, particularly I work with a lot of graduates, work with a lot of interns. I love them because they're sponges, because they come in with this, teach me everything, I want to know. And they have so many great ideas, and I love it because I learn from them. I learn so much from them because they see it from a different lens to me. But I always sit with them when I'm going through, giving them in tasks or projects or whatever they need to do. And I say, right, repeat it back to me. What is your understanding? What are you going to do? Tell me what you're going to do. and then they have to go through, and it's that opportunity for them to then, in that sort of safe spaces, that safe space environment of just tell me what you think you're going to do. What have I asked you to do? Repeat it back to me. And then it kind of forces that conversation. And there in that moment, you can nail so much, you can clarify everything. But, definitely, I think listen to understand is a missing skill. Open your ears to listening. You've got two ears, one mouth for a reason. Actively listen to understand. Make sure you're actually in the moment. You're giving whoever it is the full attention, and you're taking in, you're absorbing what you're being told, the information, and then ask questions, then clarify. So just so I understand, you want me to do this. This is I do it. I still do it now. I do it with my CEO. Right. So just so I understand that, I'm going to do this. You want this outcome. This is what you're hoping to achieve, and we're going to have it done by XY date. Yeah, great. Okay, that's what I'm going to deliver for you. Clarity. No ambiguity. Clarity. Everybody knows. And again, you're showing yourself. You're showing that side of yourself of, I'm not scared to question. I'm not scared to clarify. And I'm confident and comfortable in myself that I'm actually going to have this conversation with you, because I'm not sure I quite understand.
Yeah, completely. I had a similar experience where I was saying hands up, I have no idea. Well, I was doing a strategy day with my team, and I inherited a strategy. So some of the pillars, I was like, well, we'll work through it. It's 6 months in, let's not change it. We got into a strategy session, and I got asked, why are we doing this? And I just started laughing. I said, I don't know. I said, I have no idea. I was like, I don't quite get it. I was like, let's try find a solution that will solve the problem, right? Because clearly it's a problem, but is it a problem for today? Is it a problem for a few weeks? Like, what do we want to achieve? And I found, by breaking that barrier down and almost having a bit of a joke about it, a bit of like gosh, I've no idea. There was so much trust built in that moment with my team, because what it allowed to happen was mistakes can be made, and they know that I can come and we'll find a solution. So they learned that I'm solution focused. Come to me with problems, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But I don't care what happened, what we're going to do to move forward. Then also the trust element side of the safety, that psychological safety around, okay, so we're going to laugh about a situation, and, that will be the initial thing that happens with her. But I also know that I can come to her and challenge what we're doing, and I can ask questions, and I can say, well, actually, that doesn't really fit what I think is important. I'm hearing this is what's going on in the business. And in HR, we are always, our ears are off the ground, right? You may not know it, you may not see it, but we always have a temperature check of what's happening in the business, and that's through the conversations we build. So I really rely on people within my team to tell me different insights, like you said, from different lenses, to be able to come and say to me like, well, actually, Chelsea, like, you think we may need to be doing this, but actually the business is saying this. And letting them know that that's okay to do. And I think that really empowers them to be authentic within themselves, but also authentic within the team, because we can be just our true selves and be honest about what we want to do. And I really think that's quite empowering, to be honest, to be able to have the ability to go up to your manager and say, that doesn't make sense. I don't really like what we're doing here. I think we're going off track. And them to be able to turn up and say, yeah, you're right. And to own that mistake, maybe that we're on the wrong path. And it's just, I think it's a great way to just build that trust in your team. Like, owning your mistake,
yeah,
sense of accountability, isn't it? Like, if you can't look back and see what was your role in that situation, or why was you driving something and not have the answer, like you mentioned about, oh, actually, we don't have the answer to all the questions, so maybe we shouldn't. And no one around you is challenging you because they're too scared, or they feel they can't approach you because you've put yourself as a particular representation within the business, when actually that's not really who you are. Who you are is that you want to laugh at the situation and be like, yeah, we've got to keep it moving.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think, you know, great sort of great reflection point. I think for us as well is authenticity builds credibility. And with credibility comes trust. And I think particularly as people look to build their careers, they look to move on, they look, you know, for their career progression and those opportunities. I think it's important to understand, and it's, you know, it's something that's perhaps oversaid. I know I say it quite a lot, but I think it bears repeating, that responsibility means you've got to be accountable, because with that comes the pressure and the accountability and the ownership of, if you want to take charge, if you want to own something, you want to have the responsibility, you have got to accept that you are accountable for it, and you have to be able to sit and talk to that honestly, and you've got to be able to be vulnerable. You have to be able to admit that you don't have all the answers, and you need to stay true to your North Star, that principled line in the sand that you're not prepared to cross, because we all have it. And I think, you know, for me particularly, I think being authentic, it isn't about oversharing or ignoring boundaries. It's just about alignment. It's about showing up in a way that feels true to you, that makes sense, that is a space that gives others a space to be able to do the same. People lead by example. They follow the behaviours. They learn from those around them in the same way, you know, that we all do. If you see, if you're exposed to a leader who is authentic and who builds trust and who shows that vulnerability, but also takes the clear accountability and ownership for their actions and for their team, that's going to put everybody in a sort of good place, and it's going to build those safe spaces that, yes, it's uncomfortable. You know, these, you know, having to anybody to sit there and admit a vulnerability, or, you know, admit that you don't have the answer, it's not a comfortable place to be in. But discomfort is often the first sign that something's real. And that's where you get to that authentic, real conversation where you're actually putting yourself out there and you're saying, this is who I am. I'm open to experiences. I'm open to learning, and I want to do better. I want to, you know, I've got that growth mindset. You know, I'm open to learning. Well, I think, Chelsea, you know, thank you so much for talking to me and for sharing with me today. I think that's been absolutely fantastic. We've covered so much. I've really enjoyed our session, so thank you, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And just to say to everybody, we'd love to hear from you. So, you know, do get involved, comment, chat with us, you know, share your thoughts with us. When was a time that maybe you've had to hide part of yourself at work, and what's helped you when you've had to start showing up more fully? And if you want to join the conversation with us on LinkedIn, please do head over to The Marketing Human, subscribe to our YouTube channel.